You have been trying so hard. Harder than most people around you even realize. Harder than you let on. Harder, perhaps, than you even admit to yourself. You have been pushing, planning, controlling, managing, adjusting, trying one more approach, having one more conversation, making one more effort because surely, if you just try hard enough, in exactly the right way, at exactly the right time, things will finally fall into place. And yet, here you are, and something is still not working. Not because you haven't tried, but because, and this is what Carl Jung would say to you directly, if he were sitting across from you right now, the trying itself might be the problem. Jung spent decades observing what happens when human beings force things, force relationships, force outcomes, force their own growth, force the life they want into existence through sheer, exhausting willpower. And what he found consistently, without exception, was this: the things we force rarely become what we hoped. And the things we allow, truly allow, from a place of genuine inner stillness, have a way of arriving that our most determined efforts could never have manufactured. This is not passive. This is not giving up. This is not wishful thinking, dressed in psychological language. This is one of the most sophisticated and counterintuitive truths Jung ever documented about how human life actually works. And today I am going to show you exactly what it means, why it happens, and how to practice it in the specific areas of your life where you have been forcing the most. Stay until the very end, because the final insight is the one that makes everything else make sense. The first and perhaps most common area where people force things is in their relationships. Think about this honestly. Have you ever tried to make someone feel something they didn't naturally feel? Tried to convince someone to stay who was already leaving in their heart? Tried to be exactly what you thought someone needed, adjusting, accommodating, performing, hoping that if you just got it right enough, they would choose you? Jung called this the error of the anima and animus, the unconscious attempt to complete ourselves through another person, to fill an internal emptiness through external connection, to force a relationship into becoming something it was never organically going to be. And he observed something that is painful but essential to understand. The more desperately we try to force a connection, the more we unconsciously communicate the very energy that repels genuine connection, neediness, scarcity, the sense that we are not complete without this specific person's response. And genuine connection, the kind that actually sustains, cannot grow in that soil. Here is the exact practice Jung would give you. Think of one relationship in your life right now where you have been forcing something, trying to make someone feel, think, respond, or choose in a particular way. And ask yourself honestly, what am I trying to get from this person that I am not giving to myself? Write that answer down. Because almost always, what we are forcing from others is something we have the capacity to begin offering to ourselves. The validation, the stability, the sense of being chosen, the feeling of being enough. When you begin genuinely, not performatively, giving those things to yourself, something quietly shifts. The desperate forcing relaxes. And in that relaxed space, genuine connection becomes possible in a way that forced connection never was. Jung said, the most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm. The conflict with forcing ends not in resignation, but in a groundedness that makes you genuinely magnetic to the connections that belong in your life. The second area is one that people rarely recognize as forcing because it looks, from the outside, like discipline and self-improvement, forcing your own growth. Here is what this looks like: the relentless self-optimization, the constant measuring of your progress against an ideal that keeps moving, the inability to rest without guilt, the sense that you are never quite enough, never quite there, never quite the finished version of yourself that you are working so hard to become. Jung had a specific name for this pattern. He called it the tyranny of the persona, the conscious mind's attempt to force the whole self into a shape that meets an external or internalized standard, rather than allowing the deeper, slower, more organic process of genuine psychological development to unfold at its natural pace. He observed something that most self-improvement culture completely misses. Real psychological growth, the kind that actually changes who you are at a fundamental level, cannot be forced. It can be invited. It can be prepared for. It can be supported. But it has its own timing, its own rhythm, its own organic process that does not respond well to willpower. The caterpillar does not force itself to become a butterfly. It dissolves first. It becomes, for a period, completely formless. And from that formlessness in its own time, not on any schedule, something new emerges. Here is the exact practice. Ask yourself, where in my personal development am I pushing against my own natural rhythm? Where are you trying to be further along than you actually are? Where are you judging yourself for still being in a stage that hasn't completed yet? Write it down, and then for just this moment, give yourself permission to be exactly where you are. Not as permanent resignation, but as genuine acknowledgement of where the process actually is. Jung said the paradox of growth is this: the more completely you accept where you are, the more naturally the next stage arrives. Resistance to your current stage is what keeps you in it. The third area where forcing shows up most destructively is in our relationship with outcomes. We have a vision of how something should go, a timeline, a specific result, and when reality doesn't conform to that vision, we push harder. We try to control more variables. We exhaust ourselves managing and adjusting and planning because the alternative, surrendering the outcome, feels like failure. Jung wrote about what he called the compensatory function of the unconscious, the tendency of the deeper psyche to produce results and insights and developments that the conscious mind, in its limited perspective, could not have planned or anticipated. He observed this again and again in his patients. The people who were most attached to a specific outcome, who forced and planned and controlled with the most intensity, were frequently the ones who missed what was actually being offered to them, because what was being offered looked different from what they had decided it should look like. And the people who could hold their intentions with what he called light hands, clearly desiring something, genuinely working toward it, but remaining open to how it might actually arrive, these were the ones who consistently found that life met them, not always with what they planned, but with something that, in retrospect, fit them better than their plan ever could have. Here is the exact practice. Think of one outcome you are currently forcing, one result you have decided must happen in a specific way by a specific time. Hold it in your mind clearly. Feel how tightly you are gripping it. And then just for this moment, open your hands around it, not dropping it, not abandoning the desire, just loosening the grip. Ask yourself, if this outcome arrived in a completely different form than I expect, would I be able to recognize it? Or am I so focused on the specific shape I've decided it must take that I might miss what is actually being offered? Jung said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. The outcome you force closes your perception to everything except the one specific result you've decided on. The outcome you allow opens your perception to what is actually possible. The fourth area is perhaps the most tender of all: forcing your own healing. This is something that people who are genuinely committed to their psychological and emotional growth do with great regularity and great harm to themselves. The timeline, the expectation that by now, after all this work, you should be further along. The frustration with yourself for still feeling something you thought you'd finished feeling. The judgment that if you were really doing the work, this old wound wouldn't still be here. Jung spent his entire career studying healing, and one of his most consistent observations was, this healing does not move in a straight line. It moves in spirals. You return to the same material again and again, not because you failed to heal it the first time, but because each return brings you to it from a different level of understanding, a different depth of integration. The return is not regression. The return is the process. Here is the exact practice. Think of something you have been trying to force yourself to be over, an emotion, a wound, a pattern, a grief that you have decided by now should be finished. And ask yourself honestly, am I actually still in this? Or am I judging myself for being in something that isn't actually finished yet? There is a difference between avoiding healing work and being in the middle of healing work that simply hasn't completed. Jung's framework asks you to know the difference. If you are genuinely avoiding gently return, if you are genuinely in the middle of something that hasn't finished, stop punishing yourself for the timeline. The wound knows its own healing pace. Your job is not to force it. Your job is to be honest with it, to show up for it, and to trust that it is moving even when the movement is invisible to you. Forcing healing is simply a more sophisticated form of avoiding it. The fifth and final area is the deepest one. Stop forcing life to make sense on your timeline. Jung wrote extensively about what he called the meaning-making function of the human psyche, our deep, almost biological need to find coherence, pattern, and purpose in our experience. To understand why things happen, to connect the dots, to see the larger story. This is one of the most beautiful and most painful aspects of being human. Beautiful because it allows us to find genuine meaning in difficulty, to grow from what breaks us, to discover purpose in experiences that seemed, at the time, only like loss. Painful because the meaning rarely arrives on schedule. The understanding of why something happened, the full integrative understanding that makes it part of your story rather than just a wound in your life, often comes years later, sometimes decades later. And in the gap between the experience and the understanding, the forcing happens. The desperate need to make sense of it now, to know why now, to understand the purpose now, to have the story complete itself before it is actually finished. Here is the exact practice. Think of something in your life that you are currently trying to force into meaning, something that happened that you haven't been able to make sense of yet, something you need to understand, but the understanding hasn't arrived. And try just for a moment saying this honestly to yourself. I don't understand this yet, and that is okay. The understanding will come when it is ready. I do not need to force it tonight. Jung said, the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct. The meaning you are forcing your intellect cannot manufacture it. It arises, like all genuine psychological integration, from a place deeper than your conscious mind's determination to figure it out. The more you force the meaning, the more you prevent the actual meaning from surfacing. Let it be unfinished. Let it be in process. Let the story continue without demanding it conclude on your schedule. That Jung would tell you is perhaps the most difficult and most liberating thing a human being can learn to do. One question before you go. What have you been forcing the most? Comment below just one word if that's all you have. Relationship, healing, outcomes, growth, meaning. Just name it. Because naming what you've been forcing is the first step toward finally letting it go. Subscribe to the Inner Persona every week. Jungian psychology for the ones who are ready to stop pushing and start allowing. Because everything that is truly meant for you cannot be forced into arriving. It can only be allowed.